Hello, everyone. I'm here with Ginny Donahue, a very good friend and one of my mentors on implementing change or leading change and in schools. So I've invited her to come on and share some thinking with us. There are a lot of people around the world who are working on leading conceptual understanding or learning transfer in schools. And so I've asked Ginny to come on and share some of her thinking. So we have up on the screen my two books, if you're using them, Tools for Teaching Conceptual Understanding. And then we have Ginny's two latest books. One is Collective Efficacy, and her very recent, just came out, new book is called Quality Implementation. I love the subtitle here. It says, Leveraging Collective Efficacy to Make What Works Actually Work. I love that subtitle. And so welcome, Ginny. Thanks for being here, and I'm just going to turn it over to you if you could share some foundational principles or thinking for those leaders out there who are trying to implement conceptual understanding in their schools.
Sure, Julie. Thanks for having me. When I think about implementation, we don't need any more research about what works in schools. There's lots of research that can point us in different directions, including we know that conceptual change programs and learning transfer both have an extremely high effect size in regard to what matters most in raising student achievement. The problem becomes making what works actually work in our context with our students, given our unique circumstances. And so that really is, for me, a lot of the work of the leaders, both the formal and informal leaders in schools and in districts. And when we think about the role of the instructional leader, supporting that work of quality implementation of conceptual understanding and learning transfer is really key. So we can turn to the work of Shirley Hord and Jean Hall. They have some principles of change. They've studied change processes in schools for decades. And so we know that change is a process and that outcomes won't happen until people actually implement. We know that administrators are essential for that implementation, and even mandates can work when supported properly, and that certain interventions can reduce that resistance to change. And that resistance is often rooted in a diminished sense of efficacy. And so that's what a lot of my writing and research has really been revolving around, is how do we get to that deep implementation? And so if you just go to the next slide, part of their model, Hall and Hord's model, is called the concerns-based adoption model, and it resonates with me because they talk about that people go through different stages of concern when asked to change something in their practice. And people might start at stage one where they're unconcerned, they've heard of these conceptual change programs, conceptual understanding, learning transfer, but they've got a lot on their plate right now, so they're really not very concerned about it. And then the second stage is really informational. People start to hear about it, and they're curious about it. They want to know what it entails, and they're at a readiness where they're ready to hear more about it. The third stage is a personal stage, and people start to, as they learn more about what it is that they're being asked to do, start to think about personal concerns, like how will this affect me? How much time will it take? What will I have to do differently? And the fourth stage is really management. How do I, now that I'm learning about this conceptual understanding and I'm seeing some value in it, and I hope that it'll make a difference for my students, but how do I really manage it in my practice as part of my daily routine? Now, what the model shows is these first four stages are really just task related, and the model also says that in order for teachers to move from one stage to another, the leader, the person who's really supporting that implementation, and the team must address the concerns at whatever level they're at. So if a teacher has personal concerns and needs to know how much time and energy it's going to take, it's the implementation support job is really to help them get past those concerns so that they can move to management. But ideally, where we really want to see people is in the fifth, sixth, and seventh stage. That fifth stage is really about consequence. How will this new teaching, how will this change that I'm going to make to my practice serve my students? How will it help make students retain the information better? How will it help student outcomes? And once people get to that consequence stage, the sixth stage is really around collaboration. Now that this is really working well for me, and I'm seeing how the kids are more engaged and that it's making a difference for student learning, I want to collaborate with my peers because I want them to know more about this, and I want to share strategies, and I want them to start adopting, learning transfer. And then finally, this is where, I've heard Julie speak to many audiences and talk about this idea of, we really want you to make it your own. You guys are the experts. Your kids, your context, your curriculum and your content. And so the idea is you get to that 7th stage, refocusing, where how can you take this and make it your own? And so these final stages are really about impact. And so stages of concern says that, if you go to the next slide, Julie, stage 5, 6, and 7 are all impact related. And what we see in our work with schools over time is that when people are first introduced to a change initiative, like concepts attainment, like learning transfer, they begin at those bottom stages where it's really just task oriented.
Right.
But where we see,
what do you want me to do?
Time
exactly. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay.
And that's what I find a lot, that you have some teachers who are like, oh yeah, I get this, I'm running with it. And you have some teachers who are like, I don't know what you want me to do, just tell me what you want me to do. And that seems like those first few stages.
Yeah, and then eventually with support, right, we see people move to these final stages of implementation. And so the role of beliefs really comes into play there. And so our work, Julie, and our partnership, what I love about it is we work together to make sure that the systems are supported to the degree that these ideas aren't just going to be introduced, and that the sessions aren't a one-off, but that when teachers walk away, they have the support to be able to do this and change their practice in a meaningful way, so that they feel a sense of efficacy as a result.
That's right. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. I could just, as you were talking, I could see the schools I've worked long-term with sort of evolve over time, which I just love that it followed that same trajectory. And so based on Ginny's book, Collective Efficacy, I just adapted one of her templates that she has in there and put it on my website. So I'm sharing this with you guys, edtosavetheworld.com. If you go to that website, there's a resources tab. And this is just about collecting evidence of student learning. Because when we come together with teachers, where I see a lot of movement happening is when teachers see the beauty in the student work. And so we just created this to say, okay, what are the concepts that I'm trying to teach? What are the conceptual questions? I put in there a success criteria of students being able to explain the relationship between 2 or more concepts. And then, is there evidence that we're collecting of student understanding of those single concepts, just one concept by itself? Is there evidence of student understanding of the relationship between concepts? And is there evidence of students' attempts to transfer those conceptual relationships to new situations? And the second page of that I got from Jenny's suggestion when I showed this to her was 2 more questions, which would be, what teaching strategies or practices impacted these results? Because you talk a lot about cause-effect relationships. We don't want to just say, hey, I don't know if the kids ate something great for breakfast that day and that's why they did this, but were there actual teaching strategies that I did that impacted these results? And then what you were speaking to on your sort of stage 7 is, how can we make these results even better? And just looking towards continuous improvement, which is all about just making it your own, and what you were talking about with that 7th stage. And so we are going to continue to produce videos and content and templates and resources that people can use. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us. And just go to check out our website, because we are going to also be releasing some available dates that people could book with either me or Jenny as their leading change, that you can book to just talk to us via video, and we'll just share some of our insights and experience in leading this. Me more in the content of conceptual understanding, and Jenny more the content of implementation techniques and strategies. But we'll be releasing that very soon. So just visit edtosavetheworld.com to find out more. Again, thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Julie.